was really inspired by my mother's family from South Carolina, across South Carolina, which is where the play is set. And it's inspired by me wanting to know more about Cross, more wanting to know about the history of how the airland that's in my family even came to be. Airland as an H-E-I-R. And this is something that a lot of Black Americans, especially in the South.
And welcome to the podcast, the Broad Street Review Podcast. I'm your host, Darnell Radford. I'm still trapped in this box. Can't get out of here. I can invite people into this space, but I can't leave for some reason. If you see me out in the world, that is my doppelganger. I have a few of them because I have many hats. But we are here in this studio. This is season 10. Can you believe it? It's still season 10. At the moment, we're at episode 24. And just to give you an idea, that it usually takes a whole season for us to get to 22 episodes. We're at January and we're at 24 episodes. That just goes to tell you that Philadelphia theater is thriving like no other. There's so many conversations I have right now, and this one is one of that will be great. We haven't even gone through it yet, but we're here virtually beaming into the Drake to chat with Interact Theater Company and their upcoming world premiere production, Plantation Black, which is written by Phaedra Michelle Scott, who is our guest today. So Phaedra, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Darnell, and hello, everyone.
So great to have you in the studio with us today, the virtual studio. Some of you can hear us. Some of you can see us if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're the only one watching on YouTube, tell your friends. But we are here in the space to talk about this production. But before we get into it, let's learn about Phaedra. So Phaedra, tell us about Phaedra Michelle Scott.
So I'm really excited to be back in Philly, mainly because I actually grew up in Wilmington, Delaware. And so I think that's like a great place to start. I was actually born in Pennsylvania. So like coming back here to do the show is like pretty awesome and amazing. So I actually started off my life as a writer as a historian. I was an intern at the Constitution Center right in Philly. And I also was a content developer at the USS Constitution Museum, which is a ship in Boston. Constitutions, one document, one ship. And when I was there, I just had this experience of learning history where I would be working on exhibits and this really amazing thing would happen where I would learn something new and have to completely change the entire exhibit. And so that is something that has always stuck with me in terms of storytelling. I got into playwriting mainly because there's so many stories that I wanted to tell and so many stories from history that I really wanted to tell and like trick people into learning history, which is like one of my favorite things to do. And I think that's why museums is a great place for me because it's such like a public facing thing. That theater was like, oh, cool. Here's the emotional history that I want to make sure I tell. Like of all the stories, there's so many stories inside of me as like a Black American, like a Black diasporic American, where my mother's family is from the South and my father's family is from the North, actually all Pennsylvania. So I really come at this intersection of like Black Americanness. I don't know where my ancestors were from because that's part of the history that we live in. And so I've been just so curious about like, well, what is the culture here for Black Americans? The culture here, and like, what are the stories here that like I really wanted to just keep telling?
Wow, that's exciting. That's great. Yeah, you said your mother's family's from the South. That's what I know about my mother's family too. Primarily from the South, grew up in Georgia, and my father's father grew up in like Detroit area. So it's like, yeah, one of your family members comes from the North, one comes from the South. If you're here in this DC, New York kind of range, it kind of makes sense.
Yes,
How your
it's just like
family
that
sort of comes
blend.
together up here. Yeah.
Exactly. It's so funny when I talk to people because it's usually like, yep, me too. Like having that like intersection.
So just a question, like for you not knowing a whole lot about your family's, historical background, have you thought of using any of these sort of programs like 23andMe and things like that to try to find out more, or like, what was your curiosity about your family's past?
So my curiosity was really, I would just ask a lot of questions of my parents, of people in my family, to hear the story from their perspective. And I think this happens to a lot of people is just that I know for me, I hit a brick wall
Hmm.
where I would ask, hey, what about this person? And then I would just hit that wall of like, oh, I don't know. and like no other further thought. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like, aren't you curious? But recognizing that there's always backstories that
Yeah.
people sometimes will tell at the right moment, or maybe they'll
Mhm.
tell when you're older or whatever the reason is. And so when it comes to things like 23andMe, I've always like been on the fence about that, mainly because part of me is like, I wanna know my identity for who I am and what I see in the
Mhm.
people that are tangible to me, and that, like, the genetic makeup, what does that matter to me? Especially when it becomes, like, being American, and I think that's, like, so like, such a like, a weird thing to talk about right now,
Mhm.
is that, like, for a diasporic Black person like myself, I often feel as though there's nowhere else for me to go except America. So, if that's the case, then how can I make this place and how can I make myself proud? And how can I make the world better so that way other people can actually be proud to say that they are American? And so I think about identity in the way that's like not wanting to feel lost, but also wanting to embrace the fact that there's like this unknown. And like understanding and accepting that there's this unknown. And that's something that I'm really trying to figure out how to even do. Like, I don't have like
Mhm.
the answers. I don't know if I'm like doing it, but some days I feel more secure in my like Black Americanness. And some days I feel like adrift.
Yeah. Wow. I just resonated with all that you said, and I had to take a pause for a second. I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." Definitely right now, the country is sort of trying us all, really, and, I've had that thought too, like, I only know one country. This is my country, and so I'm concerned about things that are happening, the direction it feels like we're moving in, and that gives me drive to get out into the world every day and make some kind of meaningful impact because we can't give up our homeland because we don't particularly agree with what's happening on our soil.
Exactly. Yeah, it gets me, like, excited and fired up and, like, wanting to have intersectional conversations.
Yeah.
Because like, I think that's something that I know in Plantation Black I'm really interested in, but also I would say my body of work. I'm really fortunate that I don't live in a silo, that I have so many friends who don't look like me, aren't from the same place as me, who are, like, from all over, and I always think about that representation of, like, what does a friendship look like or a relationship look like between 2 different races, where the race of the character is not the conflict,
Yeah.
where it's like the outside world is the conflict. And so it's like, how can we figure out how to like make these meaningful relationships? There's a quote that I really love about when it comes to storytelling. It's that storytelling teaches us how to like defeat the mammoths in our lives. Mainly because when you think about like traditional storytelling and it's like, okay, cool, this is how you do it. So that way when you're ready to face that mammoth, you actually at least have some tools already because you've heard the story before of how others did it. And so I really think about that in terms of being a storyteller of like, how can I give people these mammoth stories so
Mm.
that way when they go out into the real world and like face things, they're like, you know what, I remember seeing this and like maybe I didn't understand it then, but I do understand it now.
Wow. That's a great viewpoint. Absolutely. Since you did get into a little bit of Plantation Black, let's take this time to talk about Plantation Black. So tell us about this piece.
So this piece is really inspired by my mother's family from South Carolina, across South Carolina, which is where the play is set. And it's inspired by me wanting to know more about Cross, more wanting to know about the history of how the airland that's in my family even came to be. Airland as an HEIR. And this is something that a lot of Black Americans, especially in the South, are a part of, or maybe if you know your family's from the South, check in with them and you're a Black American. Because I was always so curious, like, how after enslavement did a bunch of Black people get a bunch of land? And so, like, that was something that I never really got a clear answer for except airland. And so this play was inspired by figuring out an answer as to how did this happen? How did this like land come into this Black family where they were able to establish multiple stores and have a homestead, a farm, like a really beautiful place, especially given the timeline line and time frame. So that was really the inspiration, the kernel that started it, and then how it evolved was really going back to like my desire for history and for like understanding how people learn. So that's where the structure came from. If I could jump in on that.
Yeah, sure.
So the structure of the play is there's three different beginnings and therefore three different endings. And so before the show, truly there will be a barrel spin where we'll determine where the play starts that day. And I was interested in creating a play that worked like that because I do think that when you're introduced to certain information first, how you receive that information later on colors everything. So I
Mm,
think there's versions of the story where some characters that look like villains might be heroes, or some characters that you might think is a hero at first might turn into a villain, or vice versa. And I'm also really interested in how when the audience learns information, the audience knows more than every character. So
mm.
it's like what happens when you're an observer and you're seeing all of these pieces together. And that was something that as a historian, you have this responsibility to put the pieces together in an order so that way someone can understand it. But the responsibility is there's always so much space. So what do you have to leave out? And like what do you have to kind of gloss over? And how does that change how people are going to learn about it? And so that was something that I just wanted to theatricalize, and show that experience.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. It reminds me of, when I was hearing this explanation, I was thinking like it's very fringe-esque. Some of our listeners might remember years back, the organization New Paradise Laboratories did a show called Fate Book. And it was sort of like this real life Facebook kind of thing that revolved around their main characters on their way to this party, and something happens at the party, but the scene is reset, I think, 3 or 4 times for us, and we are able to navigate the space and follow one of the characters on their way to the party to see what happens. And then, it finally plays all the way through, and then we're all made aware, but our experience is different because of how we started each one of those resets. And I just think that concept is so exciting to sort of challenge the audience in not just with the content of the piece, but the experience itself challenges them to like, I really have to pay attention. Like, this is picking up from a different spot, and I want to see how to pull all of this together to make sense of it at the end.
Total and that's what I love too, because
Yeah.
it's like I love things, especially when I'm, like, an audience member where I'm like, "Oh, it's a mystery," and it feels like it's, like, unfolding, and I wanna know what happens next, and just, like, keeping up that momentum of just, like, "Oh, there's, like, all these moving pieces, and I'm gonna be the one who puts it together first," right?
Yeah.
So, like, I love that idea, and I also love, the fact that it is an interaction, but it's one that is unique per performance too. Just like what you described with Facebook.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that each of these moments are crafted so that you can start them in any order. Is there a particular thought process for you in how to like start and end these scenes, these moments, so that it does fit? Like, what were you thinking about in terms of like, how do I make sure that this ends neatly in a way that allows for the next scene to make sense?
It's totally this bizarre thing of understanding that the scene that starts the play is also like the moment that ends the play. And so it's like, how can you craft 2 moments that can propel us forward, but also satisfyingly end us? So the structure of this play has titles that are actually on the stage, and there's also going to be titles that are in the lobby. So, and that's the order of the play, but the starting point is what changes. So really the script itself is formatted in a way where there's these titles and then right beforehand there's a thing called a tag, which I've been saying is like a pickup note, like in music, where it's like you have this moment, there's just like, a page that gets repeated. It's like and so when you actually start the play that way, you're like, okay, cool. And then when you end it that way, the context of everything beforehand might be completely different.
Yeah. So is it in a sense like, as we sit down in the theater, will it feel like to us that we're settling into a play already in progress? Or does it carry the structure of like there is a curtain speech, there is all of this that lets us know the play is beginning?
So there
Like,
is yeah. I totally hear what you're saying. It's like we get into the play, but I also think, and I'm grateful to every modern playwright, like living playwright, is that, and like also just like film and just the big body of life that we're in. It's that I think people are actually conditioned to starting action first. And so I think that because of literally being in 2026, the style of the play is something that is understandable. Like, you know how many movies start with someone like in a chase or like
Yeah.
any moments that start in the middle of action? So it's a language that we do see a lot. And it was really fun thinking about like, oh, every scene needs to be an engine. Every scene needs to like light on fire. And so it's like really cool just to see like how can I like keep the gas up the whole entire time?
Wow. Awesome. So let's talk about let's talk about the cast that came together. Well, let's talk about your director and the cast, and then let's take us into the rehearsal room because you're part of this process too in the world premiere.
Yes. So, I mean, when it comes to new plays, it really takes like years from the first draft to workshops to actually get into the production ready point where we are now. So, I actually initially started writing this play in 2019, and I've had the luxury of working with the same director the whole time, Camille Howard, who is a great friend and a great collaborator of mine. And so, from the very beginning, we understood like the function of the play, the structure of it. And through different workshops, we were able to streamline it. So, for example, it used to have 12 different beginnings and 12 different endings, which is very, very difficult. And so, like, having six was a lot more manageable, especially when it comes to having only six actors in the play. So, when you think about like the tracks of each actor, in some ways, they each get their own play, if that makes sense. So, we were able to Camille and I were able to develop the show together, and then with Interact, what was really amazing is that, so Chaz Martin, who was the literary manager at Interact at the time, saw a reading of this play, and then after that, I got introduced to Seth, I got introduced to everyone at Interact, and they've been so awesome and generous in terms of supporting the play. So we did a development workshop in Maine called Lobster Lab, which was really fun, where one of the members of the cast, Eli Lynn, was introduced to me and truly has been with the play in every iteration ever since. And so it was so cool to like work with someone from the beginning or like from so early throughout like to actually realize it on stage.
Mm,
So Eli is the actor for that. And then everyone else, truly, it's like I believe like Kismet, like everything happens for a reason. And like we were just in rehearsal today and I literally told them I'm truly the luckiest playwright because when I'm with them and I see them with the language and I see them like figure out character in a way that I'm learning about too, because it's a world premiere, that you know, everything happens for a reason, and I am just so truly grateful for the cast, for the stage management team, truly for everyone at Interact. Like, I've got nothing but good things to say about the whole situation.
cool. Yeah. Philadelphia has wonderful talent, and Interact brings together wonderful talent, and always has some unique way of presenting something on stage. I think it's so fitting for this to come to to ultimately get to Interact because last season we got to experience the premiere of Rift or White Lies, and that had I don't want to say untraditional, but it had like a different sort of process where you're thinking about coming to see this twice because the roles change after every performance. And so these, in a sense, I don't want to call them gimmicks, but they feel like opportunities to encourage a deeper engagement in the work. And
Yeah,
I really appreciate that.
I think it's something that definitely rewards repeat viewing because there
Hmm.
is like things that you'll learn or perspectives that you might see in a different way. And what I've been saying is like my favorite version is the version that I'm watching.
Hmm.
And so it's just really cool because like there are some times when I watch it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this person's terrible. And I'm like, oh wait, like I remember like all the redeeming things about this person, but like because the order it's presented, it makes me just think about things in a different way. So it's
Yeah.
it's a cool just way of interacting with story that I'm really excited by.
What was, as you're in the rehearsal process and you start to play with the starting point, what was sort of the feedback that was coming as that was happening, at least in this iteration of rehearsal process? Like you're getting in there and what was the vibe after like the first, you know, starting point and moving into the next?
I mean, truly, I think from every single person in the room, including myself, was like, oh, how are we gonna do this? Like, how are we gonna like start and stop? Or like not start and stop, but like start at different points. And I think something that's been happening now that the play is more in the bodies of the actors is that I wish there was a term for it, but like there's a chronological version of the play, and then there's the version that the audience sees, which might
Yeah.
not be chronological, and how that affects actually the actor where it's like they have the emotional weight of whatever happened before, like literally, but sometimes chronologically, that is not true. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, how does an actor approach a scene a different way if we have the weight of what happened behind it versus how does the actor approach it when there was nothing behind it?
It's almost like saying like here's the screenplay, but here's the shot order. Like
Yes,
when we film this, we're going to film it out of sequence, but you know how the story plays. And for us, the story plays for us the way we see it when we are sitting in the theater at the time.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So exciting. Like this is the kind of theater I think people who feel like they might be a little burned out or just like, I don't know, I've had a long day, but this is an interesting experience. Perhaps I do want to give myself to
Yeah,
this process.
yes.
Yeah.
And that's something that I was really interested in, especially when it comes to people taking in a play called Plantation Black. So I will say this, and I'm happy to do this, is that the N word is not spoken. There's no violence against the Black body at all. And so to me, that was really significant and really important because I think it's about these things are a part of the world. But I know for like an audience, and I think about the human beings of the actors, where I'm like, I would not ask someone to do something that I would not do myself. And so that was something that really carried through when it came to this story. And I think if you know anything about like intimacy directing, I'm not an intimacy director, but something that I picked up from a lot of intimacy coordinators and directors is that people can go the extra mile when they feel safe and secure. And so I'm hoping that by keeping the language in a certain way and by not showing violence against Black bodies, that they can actually go even further in terms of talking about what the story is. Mainly because I do think it's very easy to shut down. I know I myself, I feel that way whenever I'm like, there are some times where it's like, I can't watch 12 Years a Slave, like I just
Yeah.
don't want to. And so I don't want any Black person or any person to walk in feeling like that tense feeling of like, am I going to see something that I don't want to see? And so that's something that I just wanted that there's a lot of care when it came to that and a lot of intentional care. And that's something I, definitely want people to understand.
Yeah. I could totally relate to what you were saying about 12 Years a Slave. Like, I felt like it's getting all these accolades, and I'm like, I can't.
Like,
Just can't.
yeah,
Even though, you know, as we are living in this moment now, we just heard like Sinners has been nominated for like,
the
breaking a record,
most,
16
yes.
nominations. That
Like,
just goes to
yes,
tell you there's a hunger for these unique stories that, I mean, in that case, it's the celebration of culture and music that it comes together in these unexpected ways.
exactly.
Was still in a sense kind of joyful to watch, even though it does have a lot of moments that are like, all in one night. How crazy.
Right? And it's like the moments in that where it's like it's tense because you know what could happen. And I
Hmm.
think that is where it's like I think the imagination is like the most powerful thing in the entire universe. And I think it's like that lingering that possibility, waiting for that shoe to drop is just as
Yeah.
dangerous.
Yeah. So what excites you the most about this piece?
I mean, truthfully, I am genuinely thrilled to like see every single iteration of it. Only because at this point we've been running the show, but since there's 6 different versions, we haven't gone through every single one of them.
Hmm.
And so, but like I can't wait to see every single one and what I learn from that. And then I also think too, it's the I always sit in the very back whenever one of my shows is up, and I people watch. And so I can't wait to like see what people are doing and seeing how people are reacting, especially knowing it's like 6 different shows that could possibly happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that being a fly on the wall in a space too, especially if they haven't met you yet and they're sitting in the dark. So even if they know you're there, they're giving themselves to the experience altogether,
Yeah.
not thinking about you in the space, but you're saying they're responding here. Okay. This audience.
Yeah.
Okay. Different ones. When you do that and you experience the energy of different audiences, because sometimes a matinee audience or an early in the week audience, it just sometimes they're just intently listening and
Yes.
and
Yeah.
not fully responding. You can tell when people feel really comfortable in a space, but like, does that make you feel nervous or in any way, or do you just say? I mean, like, how do you process? high energy night versus like a average night where even at the end there's still a raucous applause, but they were just, you know, focused through the
I
whole
mean,
thing.
I like, because I understand of also people wanting to listen and not wanting to
Mhm.
miss anything,
Yeah.
and, like, there is that, like there's, like, the good kind of quiet of, like, pin drop because everyone's super engaged,
Mhm.
and I think that you can really tell based on the bodies. It's almost like, audiences are like an amoeba. They all kinda work together, in a way where it's like if a couple people are really having a great time, that's gonna spread, and I
Yeah.
think if, like, it's really, like, intense and quiet and people are leaning in, I think other people
Mhm.
start to do it too. So
Mm.
it is like, it becomes like this, like, giant collective, of, like, hearing what those intentions are and hearing all of that. But I also do think too with this show, there are some versions of the show that might be more, like, quiet at the beginning, which kinds of teaches the audience, "Maybe I should be quiet the whole time." And there's also a version of the show that's a bit louder in the beginning, which could teach the opposite.
Interesting. That is very true. Action films don't start out quietly per se. Like,
Yep.
it's gonna be an action film from the start. Yeah, that is a good point and an interesting thing to focus on, as audiences experience this in this iteration. Like, when we chose this scene to be the starting point, the audience responded differently for the rest of it.
Yes.
That'll be an interesting and very unique experience for everyone. I hope you're planning to try to, like, pull people after the show to get them, "What do you think about this one? What did you think about this iteration?"
Absolutely, especially because it is truly random per show where we really are pulling it out of a bingo ball wheel,
Mhm.
but, like, there is like, the randomness is truly genuine, and, like, the actors are gonna figure out what the show they're doing that day about 20 minutes before the performance. So it's like there's also, like, this double energy of, like, energy of the audience and then also energy of the actors with the version of the show that they're gonna do.
Is the concept of your play in your mind, is this, like, so unique, or do you think this sort of style of storytelling is becoming more common for stage?
It's like, Fefu and Her Friends is a really great example, Maria Irene Fornes, of a play that has, like, different spots. There's so many other people whose work I am, like, standing on the shoulders of. So I'm certainly, like, not the first, and I hope I'm not gonna be the last either, mainly because I think it is really just I think about it, like, as a wheel. It's like we all build on each other, and I also freed myself where I'm like, "Everything's been done before, so I don't have to worry about it," you know?
Yeah,
So
that's a
it's just
very
like
good point. I just love the concept of challenging us to keep this story intact, but allowing it to start at different moments. And I do think particularly regional theater audiences like love a challenge. Like, we tend to be more open to new play development and plays that don't check those traditional boxes. Like, we love those. They're the ones who stand out, and they're the ones we can't stop talking about. So I think it's a great place for this piece and sort of a great time frame to be having this conversation. It'll be
yeah.
running in February through March. Also, that this is the 250th celebration of our country. These stories that are going into the past to take a look at, how far we've come and, like, how much has changed and how much hasn't. Like, these are the conversations that are necessary at this time, which is why the art is so valuable. Which
Yes.
is why
Yeah, and I
those who
think
are trying to stand in the way of this art, like reaching the people, they know what they're doing and we can't let them.
absolutely, and that like, you said it, and I totally believe it. It's like I get more fired up,
Yeah.
And it's like, this is only fueling me to make more art and to make
Mhm.
more radical art, mainly because it's like, I don't know, it's just, like, energizing in a way, because it's like, "No, I'm
Absolutely.
never gonna stop," and, like, I love being surrounded by people who have that same hunger, and, like, artists are definitely those people.
Uh, I always think about rephrasing this. I always end up asking the same thing. I've asked the same thing for like 15 years. What do you hope an audience takes away from this experience?
Well, actually, to look at their own families
Mhm.
and think about the people who are missing.
Uh,
I think, when I've done readings of this, that has been actually my favorite part of audience members coming to me and telling me, actually this happened, like my uncle, or actually this person, or actually, and just like that feeling of just like we can have a conversation. And
Mhm.
I think that would be like successful to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's crazy, like, we don't think about it because we might know our immediate family or we might vaguely know our immediate family, but sometimes there's only so far many of us go to say, like,
Hmm.
"Yeah, I know my family, I have an idea of, like, where everybody is," like, you don't go past I don't forget, maybe like second or third cousins, you're
Yes.
thinking about, how much of it you can process. It is so interesting when I think about, my family's roots in the South. I know you were talking about land, and I know that our family owned a peanut farm, and at some point we sold it, and it was like our great grandfather owned it, and when we sold it, like everyone got all the surviving
Yeah.
relatives we were all owners of this, which is something I thought was kind of interesting too, that when our family passed on, they left everything to everyone.
Which just sounds like airland.
Yeah.
Because that is a part of the, especially with Black Americans, it's like, is knowing what that means and
Mhm.
knowing, like, is there this collective property? And, like, the tricky part about heirland is because not one person can be designated as an heir, all
Mm.
the descendants are. So
Yeah.
that's kind of, like, what ends up happening.
Ah, interesting. I know. Well, it's funny, like, there are people listening who probably have heard this in so many ways, but couldn't put words together to make sense of that, but, like, Airland, yes. Uh,
Yeah, Heir, because I remember hearing it all the time. I was like, "Heirland? Like, AIR? Like, what does that even mean?" But then
yeah.
it's like upon digging and asking questions,
Mhm.
especially like I have a cousin that's my age, and both of us were so eager for these answers that our older generation family were like, "I don't know." So it was just really exciting to like kind of do this history research project, knowing we don't even know what to look for.
Yeah.
And so that's what is, I think, part of it is exciting, and I think part of it is, like, what I'm really interested in, when it comes to telling this story. And also what you were saying earlier, when it comes to 23andMe, I always read those stories about, like, "Oh, I have a surprise sibling," or, "Oh, I have a surprise whatever," 'cause it's, like, so much more common
Mhm.
than I think people recognize.
Yeah. I wasn't, like, promoting them per se, but just, like, some people don't know where to start, and they might be in a space where there isn't enough family to really dig back, dig into the past and know much, or they might just get breadcrumbs and then figure out where to go from there. But I think stories like this have the potential to encourage people to inquire about their own family, like you said. Look at your own family and think about the people who are missing and try to plug those gaps in your own family tree.
Yeah,
you know, will give us a better understanding of who we are, how we got to this point, and the legacy that we don't even know that we're carrying, but we are. To really
exactly.
give your life greater meaning and purpose when you know that your ancestors and your family are carrying. They're coming along on this journey with you. I'm trying to think about oh my god, there was a story. I think it was like Disney or Marvel put together a story where the main character was being supported by all the women in their family. It was like this big boss kind of moment, and then
Yeah.
all of the spirits of the women who came before her or them, really came and gave them all the strength and power to like get this big bad at that moment, and it was just beautiful when you think about how much of
Mhm.
what you know or what you sort of were born with comes from generations of development in your family, which became sort of this unconscious, like, yeah, it's in all of us. Like, we all have this thing. We don't know where we got it from, but we all have it.
I mean, it's truly amazing to think, like, how many people had to survive for you to even live? Like, how many people? And, like, that's incredible, and, like, all that ancestral power is, I think, within, and it's like, we're still here thanks to everyone before us, and, like, that's something just,
Absolutely.
like, I find really beautiful and also empowering, and that's why it's like, how do we continue moving that wheel?
Yeah, absolutely. So I see through the information the runtime is TBD. What's it running now?
It's definitely gonna be in one sitting, I would say, like, a little less than 2 hours.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, I'm like, "That's a movie."
Yeah. It's people always want to know that ahead of time just so they can plan accordingly. Once I get in the theater and the lights are set for this story to begin, I'm just sort of transfixed. I'm in it
Yeah.
and hope there's no sort of breakdowns that pull me out of it. Yeah.
And, like, the momentum of the story, it's like, it can't have an intermission because, like, the function of it is, like, this
Yeah.
circle. So, it really, like, lends to that, "Oh, we're in this and we can't get out," you know?
Mhm. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about the piece before we part?
I think I said everything I wanted to say. I'm, like, truly so excited to share it,
Great.
especially when yeah, and yeah, that's it. So, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Everyone, the production is Plantation Black. It is presented by Interact Theater Company. It is a world premiere by Phaedra Michelle Scott. It is directed by Camille Howard. It is on stage February 6th through March 1st. So go over to Interact Theater, that's theaterre.org, to get your tickets. As that tickets in plural, because what do I say? Theater is more fun with a +1. So, Phaedra, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today about Plantation Black. This is all so exciting. I'm like tingling. I can't wait to be in the
Yeah.
space to experience this world premiere. But thank you so much for chatting with me today. It was truly a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Darnell. Thank you.